Welcome back guys to another episode of Decentralized Chain. It's Faraz bringing you the latest news, reviews and blockchain tech. So today we are going to be reviewing TIM blockchain. Now this is the world's first GPS powered blockchain. It's a patented quantum-proof encryption technology which is claiming to have the potential of pushing 100 million transactions per second, which is quite a bold statement. So let's find out a little bit more in terms of how they're planning to achieve this. But before we dig into the actual tech itself, let's just set the scene and a bit of context. Now, if we look at a standard blockchain today, we have transactions that are happening on the blockchain. The record of each transaction is distributed to each and everyone who is part of that network. Now, the transactions keep on passing each of the nodes, and thereby it increases the consensus every time it does that. Now, the other element to kind of bear in mind here, and which is kind of relating to what we're going to be talking about, is if we lesser the distance between the nodes, then this does have an impact on the time it takes for the sharing of the records, and hence this would actually result in faster transactions. So with TIM blockchain, it divides the areas into several multiple triangles where the data of transactions in a triangle is shared only in that specific triangular region. So like a DAG, the area of each region keeps reducing with demand, which boosts the bandwidth up to 100 million transactions per second. Now, for example, let's say the graph represents Asia, and there is a spike of usage in Singapore. The graph representing Asia would fork into two, increasing the overall bandwidth of this region. So therefore, every DAG in the network initially has speeds up to 100 transactions per second. But as the number of transactions increase, the tech behind TIM accelerates the speed up to 10,000 transactions per second. So as TIM blockchain can have up to 10,000 DAGs in the network, each of which can achieve over 10,000 transactions per second, which thereby makes TIM's scalable platform for achieving 100 million transactions per second. So that's in a nutshell how the actual solution plans to work. Now, if we dig a bit deeper and have a look at the architecture, what we can see here is that TIM source code actually is derived from Ethereum. So it has all the features of Ethereum, which means that dApps that have been built on Ethereum can migrate over to TIM. Now, the core difference, however, is the way they create microblocks using graphs is totally different and has been completely rewritten, as well as how blocks are mined. So TIM takes a two-layered blockchain approach, something similar that we may have already seen in QuarkChain. And so the first layer, and I've labeled it in red with the number 1, is the root blockchain, which only stores the Merkle hash of the second layer. And then the first layer is very lightweight, approximately has about 4 megabytes in terms of data size. Now the second layer in blue is the multigraph. Now this is the one which stores all the transaction data in the form of blocks. So the first layer only references the blocks of the second layer. And blocks are basically partitioned using a vertical shard. Now this unique approach, coupled with the geolocation that we sort of went through briefly earlier, allows TIM to really achieve that network capacity of 100 million transactions per second. So as I mentioned before, the TIM technology divides the distributed ledger among a number of graphs by vertical sharding based on the actual geolocation. So nodes belonging to a graph, say, of North America will share the same ledger, different from nodes belonging to a different graph of a different region. So any transactions which originate in a graph region only participate in nodes for consensus within that graph only. And since these nodes are near to each other because of the same geographical region, it actually reduces the latency of communication between the nodes. So that then also leads into the communication element. So communication between the nodes of the graph is achieved by the Gossip Trust protocol, which works on top of the DAG topology to actually achieve a super fast consensus by using scoring mechanism, which makes it possible so that it's not required for each node to talk to every other node to form consensus. Now the other element here is TIM is also based on a proof of stake, which basically enables it to quickly decide if a transaction is valid or not by staking. So if a malicious node broadcasts a wrong message, it will be caught by another graph miner. And in lower layers, if somehow it bypasses the first checkpoint, then it will be caught by a blockchain miner. And then a cuckoo filter and then by a challenger node. So there are so many protections already built into the actual system. And this is where some of the token value and utility stuff comes in place. Because we talked about staking, so staking will earn you rewards within the system, and the rewards are you ultimately being one of those mining roles within the actual network to provide that support. Now, the other really key element here, now Tim's load balancing technology always observes the current load on a given graph. It splits the graph if the transaction load increases to a certain threshold level, effectively increasing the speed dynamically. So similarly, merge also happens if the load is low. So therefore the actual graph, instead of splitting, becomes one again. Now, in terms of looking at the actual roadmap, the actual project itself in conception has been around since August 2016. And really key dates to pull out here are going to be certainly July for a limited beta sharding testnet, September for the public beta sharding testnet, and November for the mainnet release and wallet integration. Now, in terms of looking at the actual team who are actually going to be delivering this platform, so let's start with the actual core team. So there's about 6 individuals in total. So starting with the founder, Prabhat, he has some impressive organizations on his CV. We have UBS, Capco, JP Morgan, and Standard Chartered Bank, all totaling of around 11 years of experience in consultancy, software development, and program management. So it certainly sounds like the key ingredients for a leader within this space. And since 2005, he has also been publishing research papers in fuzzy logic, neural networks, and genetic algorithms, and also has a very active personal GitHub, which ultimately, as far as I'm aware, has also been used to provide a much more accurate geolocation algorithm for fighter jets. Now, moving on and looking at the co-founder, we've got Vipin Vima, who is the architect and blockchain developer with around 4 years experience in software engineering and consultancy. And so what I'm really seeing here is that these guys are from a predominantly software engineering and consultancy background, which I think certainly makes a very good mix, because consultancy really helps you ultimately sell your solution across to institutions and businesses that would most likely be looking to leverage it. And then we've also got, moving on, Lakesh Kumar, who is responsible for business development. So background in software engineering, program management, with 4-year stint at Capco, a global consultancy, which is the same as Prabhat. And then we also have Rohit Chandan, impressive track record with over 13 years of experience in software engineering and consultancy, working for the likes of Credit Suisse, Royal Bank of Scotland, Morgan Stanley, Capco, and Microsoft. We also have Prashant Singh, responsible for business relationship and product partnership, with around 3 years industry experience in relationship management. I feel this is where we could be seeing a need for a stronger PR marketing individual to provide additional support. And then lastly, we have Debayajoti Biswas, who is also another software engineer, however only has around 3 years of industry experience, although the LinkedIn profile doesn't exactly state where and what. So the team certainly feels like they have a strong leadership presence and software engineering background, and do appear capable of being able to deliver. I personally, regarding software engineers working in the likes of top tier banks, do believe that they are at the forefront of their skill set, because when it comes to working on platforms like high frequency trading, they really need to be at the top of their game. And certainly these individuals have a very long stint in all of those major top tier banks, and certainly within a software engineering capacity. Now, as we then move on, I think one thing that the team is lacking is support around marketing, or how this looks according to the information I have access to. And the marketing is key in driving awareness. So looking at the advisors, there have been a fair few which I feel can certainly support with outreach. We have Lucas Savigny, clearly a serial entrepreneur, founding multiple companies, currently focused on fintech, blockchain, and presently an advisor for 6 ICOs, including Tim. I do question, however, how someone can be effective if your time is split between so many ICOs. Then we also have Warren Whitlock. Background appears to be in publishing and media relations, so certainly has a very large distribution network to provide coverage. We also have Srinivas Harugu. I found to be impressive, 15 years of experience in software development and consultancy, working for top tier banks such as Citigroup, UBS, Credit Suisse, Bank of America, and is also currently an advisor for ULedger and Hold Vest. So, once again, what we're seeing here is very strong blockchain backgrounds, very strong advisory backgrounds, and also consultancy backgrounds, which I think are very key, because if you are an external consultant and also you're advising on a particular ICO, then there is always the opportunity to cross-sell that technology into a particular institution that you might be consulting for. As we then move on, we've got Ravi Sakar, who is an MIT graduate, has around 15 years of consultancy and fintech experience working across also the likes of Infosys, Tata, Citigroup, and Morgan Stanley Saxon, and is currently the head of blockchain and fintech for Hexware, which is a global consultancy focusing on the digital world. And then lastly, we have Kehil Pule with around 9 years experience on marketing, driving brand awareness. So I think this is quite key advisor to the sort of marketing element. Certainly has the skill to be able to really drive and help with onboarding and driving the awareness for the actual ICO. Now, if we then move on and have a look at the token metrics, we have a hard cap of around $19 million. So I think that's fairly reasonable for a blockchain project. I've seen some slightly higher, but they seem to be floating around the $20 million mark. Now, that puts one TIM token at 15 cents. Now, if we have a look at the actual split, we've got 29% sold at seed round. Now, I'm aware that this was sold at 10 cents a token with a 35% bonus, and the bonus is locked up for a year. Then we also have a 2% on the pre-ICO, which was held back in March. So once again, that has sold at 10 cents a token with a 35% bonus with a lockup of 6 months. The ICO itself for the crowd sale and the private sales that are currently ongoing is around 37%, and that is being sold at 15 cents a token with a 3-month lockup on the bonus. Now, in terms of the actual bonus amounts handed, if you are contributing up to 250 Ethereum, you get a 10% bonus. Anything between 250 to 500 gets you a 20% bonus, and anything above 500 gets you a 30% bonus. In terms of the actual foundation, that has taken 22% of the actual tokens with a 3-year lock. So far I'm liking the sound of the actual lockups. All of the bonus clearly are not going to be handed out the moment they're on exchange. There is going to have to be a wait. So I certainly feel that that always helps with the actual token valuation and sort of controls the dumping effect to a certain extent. Now, looking at the team and advisors, they're sharing around 9% of the tokens, and whilst it does say that it's a 1-year lockup currently on the web page, after a conversation with the team, I am under the impression that they will be adjusting the actual team lock to be even higher. Now, moving on to the actual awareness and hype, they have a number of presences across different social media outlets. We have Facebook, we also have Twitter with over 1,000 followers, we have Telegram, equally with over 1,000 followers, and I should add that the team are very active at answering all questions. There is also GitHub, LinkedIn, Medium, YouTube, which I've found quite interesting because the founder, Prabhat, has also been live streaming AMAs with the community, where they're by asking questions and he's just sort of answering off the live chat, which I found quite impressive. So no YouTuber has really been involved to date as of yet. And then likewise, as we sort of move on to my final thoughts for the project, I'm going to score it a 4. It's certainly a first for me using GPS, and whilst the claims of 100 transactions per second sound significantly high, looking at the project, the white paper, and the alpha testnet, it does feel that they are on the right path. In terms of the prototype, I've given it a 5. I actually spent an hour with the team over Skype, both with Prabhat and Rohit and Srini, and they had walked me through the actual code base and also showcased the actual alpha testnet, which was pushing a cool 6,000 transactions per second. The next stop, I've been told, is to showcase 55,000 transactions per second, and I'll be looking forward to seeing that. But if you wanted to actually test that out and just kind of see that for yourself, if you head over to their web page, what you'll see is the alpha preview WIP in progress. And what this here is actually showing is the actual test nodes running and pushing through the actual transactions. And here what you'll have is around 6,000 transactions per second according to the graph. Now I've actually seen the underlying technology that this is pulling the data from, and I can certainly say that it is doing what it's saying on here. So I'm certainly impressed with the actual alpha and the prototype that they've got here. Now moving back into the sort of final thoughts section, the team I've given a 4. At first I did have my doubts when I dug deeper into the background of the teams, and having an extended conversation with Prabhat, it is clear he is a thought leader in this space and has been since 2010, with publications and the use of geolocation within US fighter jets as well. Now in terms of the advisors, I've given it a 3.5. My personal view is that they should help with pushing out the marketing and awareness, but this is one area I feel that Tim Blockchain as a whole is lacking. The project seems super, but awareness hasn't quite picked up yet. And in general, their advisors have solid backgrounds in finance and consultancy, which I feel always helps open doors and cross-sell projects into institutions. Now let's talk about partnerships. While nothing is officially confirmed by the team, I am aware that they have a strong tie with the Singaporean government. Now this is key because if we look at the Tim book on their website, what I found really interesting is that Tim was initially a company named Bitpost, based out of Delaware in the USA. Now it was developing IoT solutions for logistics and tracking for clients like Alibaba in tie-up with Singapore Post. Now initially Bitpost delivered the solution using Ethereum blockchain and a very cheap IoT device. However, it did not meet the criteria of high transaction rate demanded by their client, which were available using a standard client server model. So if I was to take an educated guess, it would imply that they most likely have a future partnership with the Singaporean government and Alibaba. Now guys, this is just me reading between the lines, so I would advise you do your own research to validate. If that is the case, having a government body and Alibaba on site could be massive for this project. Now, looking at the token metrics, I've given it a 4. I like the supply, but more importantly, they have thought about the lockups, and they are significant for early investors, especially the bonuses that have been handed out. It should certainly allow the price to appreciate or maintain, at least when it hits exchanges. For hype, I'm going to give it a 2. Whilst they have a strong presence across several social spaces, something to me feels lacking, and they certainly need a drive or significant push in this space. It's a great project, and I think once it's picked up by influencers, word will get out and it will gain some serious traction. So guys, there you have it, Tim Blockchain. If you like the review, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. And please join my Telegram. Details in the description are below. See you in the next episode, guys.